Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see you. We've got Fawn back again. And we're just admitting a few people as we go in. So looks like we have quite the crowd. I'm so happy. We've got 26 people here so far. Tell your friends, give them a text message, let them know we're doing this.
Probably let my friends list know that we're doing this.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do a IHA live right now. Here we go. I just shared that thing again. Let's see, share. Where's the link? If I want to just share the link, it's right in the event, right?
Yes, and they should be able to find the link on the IHA Facebook page as well.
Okay.
And oh, Ada's here, Lisa's here, great. Well, welcome everyone to our second evening with Fawn. We had such a fabulous response last time that we had to have her back, and we so appreciate her coming tonight, Fawn Anderson. And I am your host, Farrah Green. I am in Wyoming, and it is pretty amazing we can have this call with you all the way over in, what is the town that you're in again, Fawn?
Carrollton, Virginia.
Carrollton, Virginia. So we're talking all the way across the country and then having people all the way from Nova Scotia, Canada to California here tonight. So thank you everyone for coming and supporting Fawn here tonight and the International Horsemanship Association. So just so you know, before we begin, if you are not a member of the International Horsemanship Association, please check it out. Fawn has been an instrumental part in helping us try to redo our vision of what the International Horsemanship Association is. We really do want to be welcoming. Again, we are a nonprofit organization, and at the end of the meeting tonight, we have a special promotional code for you to get 20% off a digital membership tonight. So please hang in there for the end of the presentation. We would love to give that to you, and we are working really, really hard to expand our resources. So please, please tell your friends about the International Horsemanship Association. If you do refer a friend on the website, on your membership form that you fill out, have them put your name in there, because eventually we do want to give you some credit for all of your friends that you refer. So please support us. We're looking forward to opening the doors of our LMS software, which Fawn will hopefully be in the process of filming her online courses and be hosting them on there for us. So we're looking forward to seeing what those courses look like. And before we begin, if you do not know who Fawn is, she's actually one of my oldest friends when I started my official natural horsemanship journey. I met her at the Farley Center, and she was over there trimming her little horse, and I was fascinated, and I came over and asked her all kinds of questions, and she told me everything she knew. So it was a pretty cool way to meet somebody, and I enjoy every time we get to spend time together. So more people are joining. That's wonderful. So Fawn studies natural, classical, vaquero horsemanship. She has studied with some names such as Buck Brannaman, Pat Pirelli, and Karen Rolfe and Philip Carl in the dressage and école de légèreté side of things. Fawn has been teaching horsemanship since 2001. And again, she is in the process of developing her online courses. So tonight, Fawn was trying to go through all of these really cool points that she had the last time we were here, but she didn't get through them all. So we would like to continue with part 2 of mindfulness in horsemanship and training. So take it away, Fawn.
All right, so Farrah, do you think I should go do any review of what we did last time, or just jump right in where we stopped?
You could do a short review, maybe. That sounds great.
All
and
right.
for those of you, I'm sorry, for those of you who have questions, just please save those, but go ahead and type them in the chat. And if they're relevant, I will try to ask those as we go through. All right.
Perfect. All right, let me just look at my deal. So last time we were together, we were talking about mindfulness in horsemanship, and we were really talking about being, when I say mindfulness, what I'm referring to is really being conscious of how you're structuring your horsemanship sessions so that you can get the most out of your sessions. Because a lot of us don't have a lot of time these days, and we're out there working with our horses, and we want things to be efficient. If we only have 10, 15 minutes, to play with our horses, we want to make the most of those 10, 15 minutes. And so kind of what got me thinking about these types of things was when I would see students who are out there with their horses spending a lot of time. I mean, like they go out there 5, 6, 7 days a week working with their horses, and they just weren't progressing at the rate that they ought to have been for the amount of of effort they were putting in. And so I got really interested into what was holding them back. Because as a teacher, it's very important to me that people are successful, and I want them to achieve whatever goals they have and help them in any way I can. So I started really studying, why people weren't getting the same quick results that I was getting. Because when I started learning about horsemanship, I mean, the speed with which I was able to progress was just night and day different to anything else I'd ever done. And so I was like, well, how come everybody's not getting these results? So that was kind of what led me to this whole, the topics I'm going to discuss here tonight. So last time we were together, we talked about some things. We did a brief overview of the different types of pressure: steady pressure or rhythmic pressure. Those are basically the two ways that we'll use any kind of guiding or directing pressure to communicate with our horses, what we're looking for. We talked about, kind of a real beginner's view of phases of pressure. So we described, basically the lightest as possible and the firmest as possible versions of, so we had a bit of a spectrum on steady pressure. So the lightest was, touching your horse's hair, and the strongest was, going all the way to touching the bone. So that if I had my fingers and I was pressing, how strongly was I pressing? And it's not a push, it's a press and a hold. So that was steady pressure. And then we described rhythmic pressure as being, something with rhythm. And, that we described the softest phase as a suggest and the firmest phase as a promise. And obviously that can look really different depending on, the horse and the person and the situation. But those are, the point of describing those 4 phases wasn't to set them in stone so that those are the phases forever, but it was to give somebody a range. Because what you'll notice is as you progress in your horsemanship, your phases will get more and more refined. So what once upon a time was phase 4 is now like phase 400, and what used to be phase 2 is now your new phase 4. So it can get that refined. So we talked a little bit about pressure, the 4 phases of pressure for steady or rhythmic. And then we talked about learning phases. So, learning how to apply your phases differently depending on which stage of the learning your horse is in, or what the situation involves. So we had teaching phases. When you're teaching something new, or the horse is confused, or or worried or unsure of something, you'll use teaching phases, which is going through phases slowly and methodically, kind of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So, and having maybe about 3 seconds between each phase, somewhere between 1.5 seconds to 3 seconds. That was your teaching phases. We talked about your controlling phases. So if the horse does something that you didn't ask for, say for example, they bolts to go right over top of you and run you over, how to use controlling phases, which would be match, mirror, and override. So if the horse is going to come over top of me, I might throw up a block that matches, mirrors, plus does just enough to override that. So I don't just want to stop them, I'd like to have them have a little bit of a rebound too. So they kind of, not only stop running me over, but hopefully get off of me too. So match, mirror, override, or pattern interrupt was another example of a control phase. So that's something that kind of snaps them out of it, something that kind of breaks that fixation. If they're fixated on something and you just don't exist, a pattern interrupt is something that kind of just breaks through that to reach them. So that was controlling phases, which obviously we use that more for emergency purposes, or when we need to, but it's not meant to be our main training strategy. And then we had reinforcing phases. And I wanted to go over this one again, actually, because I missed one last time. So I was in a bit of a rush putting this together last time because I'm a procrastinator. I leave everything to the last minute. And I would actually like to go over this one with you guys again. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slide. Hold on.
I think that's great fun. And to be honest, each time we do it, there's like another layer to it. So even though maybe some of these people have heard these things before, I think it's always nice to, okay, there's a new layer to that. Like you said, what was your phase 4 is now your phase 2.
Absolutely. So we talked about, you know, the different ways of applying your phases. There you go. So we had the teaching, the controlling. Now reinforcing, we talked about how to reinforce basically your rhythmic pressure, or, you know, in Pirelli they would call that driving game, if you're more familiar with the Pirelli language. But so if you're reinforcing rhythmic pressure, what you do that with is through a long phase 1 and then quickly going to a phase 4. Now phase 4 is what it takes to get their attention, to add meaning, to support them. It can be a lot of different things. And then the one that we didn't talk about, because I forgot about it, is how to reinforce steady pressure. So how to get and this is a super important one, because one of the hardest things to get a horse excellent at is to get them to where they feel amazingly soft and light moving off of steady pressure. You know, I use the analogy, if I want my horse to feel like I'm pushing a paper boat across the water. So to do that, I would have phase 1 or phase 2, let's think hair or skin. I would, you know, put those phases on to ask my horse to say yield the hindquarters. I'd touch with my hand or my leg, touch the hair or maybe the skin, but I'm not denting the skin. That would be phase 3. So phase 1, 2, I'd use steady pressure, and then keeping the steady pressure on, I'm not replacing it. I'm going to add phase 3, phase 4 rhythmic. So phase 1, phase 2, hair, skin is steady pressure, and then maybe I'll come in with my whip, with something, with my stick, with my flag, with my lariat. So, you know, maybe I'm riding with a couple coils of rope on my horse, and maybe I'll do phase 3 light tapping, or a little bit, you know, clearer tapping to kind of energize my horse and really describe what movement it is I'm looking for and kind of what piece of their body I'd like them to move out of the space. So that's how so that was one I wanted to go over today, is because we forgot that, I forgot that, is how to reinforce your steady pressure game.
Well, I think that's a brilliant way to put it, Fawn, when you were talking about, like, they're not listening to your leg. There's only a certain amount. You don't want to push harder and harder. It's just going to lock your muscles up, lock theirs, and it's going to be exhausting. So by just going to the phase, like you said, what you want to be your phase 4 with that leg, and then slowly start adding the rhythmic pressure, but not taking your leg off. Is that correct? And then
absolutely
adding your legs, you know, your rhythmic, your little stick behind your leg to say, hey, this is as much as I'm going to let you know with my leg. So I think that's wonderful. It keeps people's legs from getting too tired and horses from getting too dull.
Well, and what usually happens is when people use their hands, they forget about their legs. And when they use their legs, they forget about their hands. So this is really one of the first exercises where you really have to think of both. Like in this, you know, in this application of the phases, because you're putting a leg on and you're supporting it with something else. You're putting your hand on and you're supporting it with something else. So you've got two different things to be very aware of, like, how is my feel in my hand, or my feel in my leg, or my feel in my seat? And then also, how is the feel in, you know, in whatever rhythmic pressure application I'm using to, you know, to support that.
Analogous to patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time.
Yes. It can be difficult in the beginning, but with practice it gets much easier. And the reason it's such a powerful thing is because horses can't lean on rhythmic pressure, and horses' main language is rhythmic pressure. They use the power of intent, you know, intention. That's how they talk to each other. You know, it's a very highly refined language, and, you know, we want to be able to, you know, kind of progress our understanding of how to use that language to a really, you know, evolved place as well, so that, you know, we're not just talking in a primitive way. We want to, you know, be able to have really more advanced conversations. You know, and even though I use the word pressure, a lot of people think of pressure as like pressure, a bad thing, but I prefer to think of, even though we use the word pressure, when I think of pressure, I'm thinking more of guiding pressure, supporting pressure, defining pressure, being more clear. Because if I dance with somebody, I'm a dancer. If I dance, that's a game of steady and rhythmic pressure. If we're dancing freestyle where we're not holding hands, that's all driving game. It's feeling their intent and their energy and their space and responding to that. So, just because I'm using the words pressure, I don't want you to think about it's about, like putting pressure on the horse. Because even though it's not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but we do, if you're using a really evolved horsemanship program, you should get to the point where you're not needing to do that. Like, sometimes you might have to do that in the beginning if there's a lot of opposition or confusion, just to kind of, especially control phases, for example. But you want to get to the point where it's it's more of a dialogue, it's more of a dance with your horse. And you're building in a lot of motivational strategies so your horse wants to do. They want to find the answer. It's like this puzzle, and they're trying to figure out, okay, I know that if I do what you're asking, things are going to be great because you've never lied to me. And anytime I've ever done what you've asked, it always resulted in something good. It always resulted in something I was worried about going away, something that, a pressure that I didn't know what to do with when I did the right thing, that released. When I got in the middle of the rectangle, everything just, melted and felt good. So we want to think a little bit about that. But horses can really, the reason that the steady pressure game is so difficult is that's not their native language. They use it a little bit, but compared to the driving rhythmic pressure, they don't use it near as much. And the other challenge with steady pressure is, and I had a really amazing horse, Lancelot, who taught me some really cool lessons. Spent some time with him with my friend Amy Brumhall, and she does a lot of stuff around intention and space, conversations about space with horses. That was really great for him. And I love spending time with Amy. Anytime I can go up there and hang out with her, she is awesome. But she really helped me to see how, when, she would describe it. So if you have like a bubble, when we're playing with our horse and having conversations about rhythmic pressure, we are generally outside of that bubble, except for if we go to make contact. So basically we're talking to the horse's bubble. But when we ride them and when we have conversations using steady pressure, we are inside that bubble. And Amy referred to that as inside their intimate space. And to me, that really made me much more aware of when I was inside the space with my horse, because when you're in their intimate space, what do horses do when they're inside each other's intimate space? Well, mutual grooming. That's something that they often, when a horse kind of comes into another horse's intimate space, they'll nibble on each other's withers. Stallion games, dominance games, like to kind of see, hey, let's practice our, rehearse for the day that we get to move up in the hierarchy and maybe take over a herd of our own. Or just, horses, knowing kind of, who will move whose feet is a really important thing for them to know, because they are looking for a leader, and they need to make sure that leader is fit and strong and aware. So they're always testing that. So, so these are the types of conversations they have when they're inside the intimate space. So it's either a leadership, a dominance question, or a grooming question. So this one horse I had, whenever I would go into his intimate space to ask him to do something, or pretty much whenever I was riding him and we weren't moving, he would drop his boy bits. His gelding bits would drop. And I didn't know it until one day I was riding with Linda, and she said, like, I knew it on the ground, but I didn't know it riding until one day she told me, she said, do you know that every time you stop and you're standing still, he drops? I'm like, no, I didn't know that, because I don't ride with Muir as often. So I'm like, how
right. Especially looking at that spot.
But I had been aware of it on the ground, and and when I started having these space conversations with them, because at first I was like, well, do I need to be worried about that? But when I was over at Michael Wansenried's place in Switzerland one time, he's like, oh yeah, no, if they're down, that's a frame of mind they're in. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to test that, right? Because maybe because he kind of looked like he was kind of happy and just chilling out. So I tested. I'm like, all right, what's the quality of my yield when he's down, when he's dropped? And so, when his boy bits were hanging, my yields were always sticky. Nothing was immediately available. So, so I'd have a little conversation about, like, hey, Are you paying attention? Are you ready to yield the, are you ready to yield the space that your hindquarters are in? Did you notice that, I sent an intent through there? And without fail, anytime he was dropped, he was not, he wasn't receptive, he wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I do just a couple of those yields where I'd clear that space until, I'd say, hey, did you notice? And he said, yes, I did notice. And he would move off of the, the path of intent that I kind of sent out there, and he would just kind of yield off of it. And then as soon as the yields got smooth and flowy, he was up again. He brought it right back up. So I was like, oh, how interesting. So, I really realized, and I realized that it was whenever you would touch him, it would, in the beginning, like, anytime you would touch him, like if you would start to groom him or saddle him, as soon as you'd start touching him, he would start to drop. Mm-hmm. And, but as soon as you got your yield quality, he was up again. And he was a pretty special horse. He was as close to a stallion as a horse could be. Without actually having any of the boy bits, the breedy bits. So,
well, and how old was that horse, Fawn?
He was donated to me when he was 3 because he grabbed the owner by the leg and pulled her off.
Very clever.
He was special. He was really special. Yeah. He was a bit of a monster. But he loved people. He absolutely loved people, but he was the biggest punk of a horse. I mean, he was the type of the horse that if you went, like, if there was a rope, he'd have it in his mouth. He was like a viper with a rope. He had to have things inside his mouth. And he was a really interesting one because a lot of the strategies that I'd learned, like when I was following Pirelli, just didn't work with him. Or the strategies of Buck, like the being firm, it just, those things weren't working. It wasn't until I really became aware of having conversations about space versus having conversations about body parts. Which could be a whole nother IHA live. So I'll say that is an interesting subject, but I digress.
I really appreciate your comment too, going back to what you said a little bit earlier about the pressure, that it's not always on the horse and that it can be very intimate and we need to evolve our conversations. I think that's a brilliant thing to say. Would feel be an appropriate word to use, like, instead of pushing a horse around, offering them a feel guidance to go to, like, it should just be, that here we go together, like as if you were dancing. You would also use that term as well.
Oh, absolutely. And and that's the type of feel I'm talking about. Not everybody does that. I mean, I'm sure you can think of a specific trainer who kind of goes in there and it's like, every time you ask this horse to move, it's kind of like a little bit of an attack. It's like, get out of here right now or else. And I think it was David Lichman. I was listening to one of his podcasts. Actually, it was the first podcast I think I ever listened to. It was one from David Lichman, and it was because I'd heard the title or something, and it was something, the title or something was like, is your face for a thinly veiled threat? I think that was the title. I think I might even mention that last time. I was like, oh my God, yes. And this was this thing, have you ever heard that poem that Ray Hunt would always recite called The Man in the Glass?
The Man in the Glass?
The Man in the Glass basically talks about that, like, you can please everybody in life and everybody can think you're all great and awesome, but when you look at the man in the glass, like, he's not fooled. Like, he knows the truth. Like, you might be able to fool those guys, but you can't ever fool the man in the glass. And this was one of those man in the glass things, because, like, I'm like, yes. Everybody else was telling me, oh, your horse is so light and he wants to be with you and he's this and he's that. But the man in the glass knew that, he's with me because it's a thinly veiled threat. He's with me because if he doesn't, it's like, move this or else. Like that super nice phase 1 was backed up with a or else. And that was kind of a truth that I knew inside, but it was kind of one of those uncomfortable truths that nobody really talked about.
How did you get beyond that? Not to bring you off topic, but like, what do you remember the moment where you kind of got beyond that?
Yeah, and definitely it was the transformation from having conversations about body parts to having conversations about space. And
yes, so you're not going at the horse. You're
so, for example, to give you like a Reader's Digest version of what I'm talking about there, so we don't get totally derailed, but I think it's an important conversation. For example, I can say do a hindquarter yield by looking at my horse's hindquarters and coming in and saying, I want you to move your hindquarters. So my focus is on the hindquarters. I'm talking to the hindquarters. and the horse perceives it as me asking his hindquarters to move, or best case scenario. Worst case scenario, he perceives it as I'm going to come and get your hindquarters if you don't move. Like there's that implied threat thing, right? And so that was the thing. There was always that move it or else I'm going to come and get your body part. Right. So when you're having conversations about body parts, it's inherently going to be a little bit of a dominance conversation, where like, hey, move it or I'm going to come and bite it. You know, that dominance conversation. I'm going to come in and take a hold of it. Whereas if I were to have a space conversation to move the hindquarters, you know, I would first, you know, I would think about, hey, there's a place I need to go. And that place I project is right through on the far side of your hindquarters. Yeah, so I project some place that I need to be, first of all. So that's my intent. My intent is I need to go over there. And your hindquarters happen to be on my path. So I would, you know, so I'd have that intent walking forward. And then as soon as I was close enough for some part of some tool or me or whatever to touch, you know, my horse's bubble, I would clear the space of the bubble, say with if I have a stick or a flag, or the coils of my rope. I would describe the space that I needed by touching the bubble. I would tap, you know, I'd kind of come through the bubble. I'd clear the bubble, say, hey, I need this space, making contact with the bubble. And then if I didn't get a response, I would clear the body part. So my tool would go through the body part, kind of say, hey, I need this off of my path. And the difference was that instead of the horse perceiving that I was attacking him, you know, say if I had to get a little bit bigger, a little bit firmer, instead of him perceiving it as an attack, which often in the very beginning a horse could, you know, they could get defensive, they could get worried, they could get scared. They realized that it wasn't about them, it was about the space. I was just clearing the space. And the moment they were off the space, I would walk through that lane that they'd given me and I'd land on the point that I'd projected to and I'd boom, touch down. So, and it was very important that I actually got there and boom, touched down. And what I found is when I started having conversations about space, horses didn't get confrontational because they didn't get defensive. They didn't get worried because they didn't feel attacked. And it naturally created and built draw because my horse innately wanted to follow me because the problem is when we're having conversations about body parts, often our horse perceives that, like, you know, when a horse has a conversation about a body part with another horse, it's a punishment. They're driving them out of the herd. Like it's a way that they can kind of discipline another horse. So they'll come in and they'll like drive that horse out of the herd. And that's the kind of the harshest form of discipline a horse will give another horse is to drive it out of the herd. That is the worst thing it will do to another horse, you know, as far as the horses are concerned. Because now it doesn't have its safety. They're like the herd is so much something that, you know, they define their safety by. So, and you know, I had a horse called Trinity who really taught me this. She was struggling when I was doing round pen work, and I realized one day, I just had this realization, she feels like I'm driving her away, like I'm chasing her out of the herd, and then she would get really lost out on the out on the circle in the round pen. She'd get a J in her tail, and she'd get really tight. So, you know, so her and this other horse, Lancelot, these two warm bloods I was working with at the time were perfect because they were both having troubles, and they were both troubles that needed these space conversations to be fixed. So instead of driving her out and away from me on the circle, I just started having space conversations to say, hey, the space that you're in, I need. And then when she would go, instead of me driving her, I'd be like, hey, we need to go on the circle. Like, we are circling now. And I would go with her. You know, because she just wasn't ready to go out by herself. So just little kind of shifts in how I thought and how I used my conversations about space to where the horse didn't perceive it as an attack. I could still be clear. You know, I didn't have to be wishy-washy, or, you know, it's not like we were just, you know, out there, you know, chanting love lyrics and you know, hoping for the best. You know, yeah, because I'll buy into a little bit of that stuff just for fun, you know, because I'm pretty open-minded. But at the end of the day, I need stuff that works, and, you know, I need to, you know, to make sure that if, you know, push comes to shove, I can get things done if I need to, because my horse's life or my life might depend on it.
Well, I think that is a brilliant way to think about it, claiming the space or focusing through where you need to go and moving whatever it is in your way. I've had that same realization in my time, so I appreciate you outlining it. Hopefully it'll help many of the other people out there from accidentally attacking their horse and getting stuck in, you know, it's all about pushing on their poor horse all the time. So that's brilliant. So we're just about halfway through, and wanted to make sure that we got to some of your other awesome PowerPoint points here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking that moment and going through that, because I think it's so valuable.
All right, let me share my screen again. This always takes me a moment. There we go. All right, can you see my screen now? Yay. All right, so we have teaching, controlling, reinforcing, and refining. Refining phases are, you know, starting at softest phase, going from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Oh, my horse is responding back to phase 1. And we talked about, like, you know, being able to recognize when you should be in each of these different stages. So, you know, if my horse knows what I'm asking, but they're just, you know, kind of taking their sweet time about it, you know, or they're taking, you know, say you're using teaching phases, and they're like, well, at 9 seconds, you're right about to go to an uncomfortable phase, so that's when I'll move. So, yeah, reinforcement phases is to get them to care a little bit more about phase 1, you know, or to, you know, to get them to put a little more effort into things. And then refining phases, you know, are, you know, when your horse doesn't need that phase 4, they just need, you know, they don't need you to go from phase 1 straight to phase 4. You know, they just maybe need a little bit more information, but they're absolutely, they know what it is, they're willing, but they just maybe got a little confused for a second or a little distracted for a second, and they just need you to just go back to those little bit slower phases just to give them a little bit more information, because they're absolutely willing to oblige it. You know, they're happy to oblige, they're in a willing frame of mind, and they know what you're asking if you just kind of explain it to them just a little bit clearer. So well, it's not something
wouldn't it be true that each new thing that you teach, that you revisit the scale? You're not going to be every single thing that you do at the reinforcing or the refining unless you're not teaching anything new. But if you're teaching something new, you might have a task that you have to go back to your teaching phase because it's new, and then, oh, this is something we've done for a while, but maybe we're bringing it up to the next level now. We did the half pass at trot, now we're doing a canter, so I'm going to be a little bit more patient and go back to the teaching phase. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you know, and it's a real dynamic thing, because it's not like it's just a set, like you start here on day 1, day 2 you're here, day 3 you're here, day 4 you're here. It changes from moment to moment. So, you know, being able to really evaluate, you know, and we talked a little bit about that in the last discussion, being able to evaluate which phase of learning is my horse in, you know, and do I need to adjust? And these aren't really things that you think about when you're out there with your horse. These are things that you think about, you know, at the end of the day, you put your horse up and, you know, you're driving back from the stable or whatever, and you're analyzing how the session went. That's when you use these types of things. So, you know, you're thinking at night and you're feeling during the day. So, you know, at the end of this is, you know, one of the things about mindfulness and training is if you're not thinking back on how the session went and kind of, you know, analyzing it and going, well, what went well, what didn't go well, and then looking for reasons why some things went better than you expected and why other things maybe didn't go as well as you expected. So what all these things that I'm giving are meant to be is they're meant to be strategies for you to really be able to break down the session and pinpoint, well, why didn't this work? And, you know, so these are just some things to get people really thinking and to be able to understand, you know, why they might not be getting the same results that they could be getting if they were to do things just a little bit to, you know, adjust their approach a little bit. And this is the mindfulness. Like, if you don't have the theory, if you don't have the theory part of your practice, you are not going to get the results. You need to understand why things work and why they didn't work, unless you're just one of those rare freaks who just is good at something and they don't really know why. You know, and we all know those are the people that are super talented. You know, we all know them. They're the talented people. And they don't tend to make great teachers either.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Everything that has been difficult for me, I'm really good at teaching.
Exactly. So then we talked about, you know, don't leave your horse hanging on a phase 4. I probably should have reviewed the last one, this was a while ago, but this was the concept of, if you're not going to take the time to let your horse be a winner, to let your horse succeed and to kind of follow through with something so they understand what you asked, maybe it's better just not to ask that in the first place. So for example, and that's not always possible. So let's be realistic. But when I'm in a training session and I have the time, and there's not something else I need to get to, but when I'm in the training session and I have time, if I have to kind of come in and be a little bit, more strong or more loud or more assertive or whatever words you want to use, if my horse wasn't really clear on what I wanted, and I had to kind of do something to really get them clear, well, they're telling me that they didn't understand. There's a problem there in either they didn't understand what I was asking, or maybe they didn't think it was important to pay attention, or whatever it is. So if I, so the whole saying, don't leave your horse hanging on a phase 4, if I had to go to a phase that was not one of my dream phases, like the phase oh, everything feels great. If it didn't feel great, whenever possible, repeat it so that you can get that success.
Well,
so
what you just made me think about is if I send a horse in the circle, and I have to use a phase 4 to ask that horse to go in the circle, I started to notice that the longer, the whole time they're out there, they just think kind of nasty things like, ugh, that was horrible, you yelled at me, And so I've started to just, okay, send them out in the circle, they understood, then bring them back and kind of pet them right away and say, hey, you're okay. It wasn't anything personal. You just didn't understand. Let's try again. And then the next time is probably going to be, much less of a phase. And then the time that they're out there, they're not thinking how awful I was, or that was just mean of me, whatever I did. It's like, oh, they're okay. I'm out here and she's not bothering me. That was nice. I did it right. Yay. So that's exactly what I thought about when you said, I think it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and you just got to know, horses are quite amazing creatures. If they're not, doing what you ask, it's because either they don't understand, or you've taught them to do the opposite, and you've given them, there's been something in it for them to push against you, or there's a competing motivator, maybe their survival is something that's more important, so you have to take care of that. So there's always a reason, because horses are incredibly generous. If they're not doing what you ask, you got to figure out a better way to present it. Or just kind of stick with it long enough that they can figure out what the heck you're asking. Because if you move on to the next subject and they had no idea what you're asking, and you just move on, well, I guarantee you're gonna have to go there again and again and again and again. Whereas say I was doing the walk through, clearing space for the hindquarters, maybe I suggested that I needed space behind. My horse didn't understand what that meant, so then I take my stick and I go through the hindquarters, and I'm not beating them. Often it is so light, and I don't know if I have some film of that. Maybe I might towards the end attempt to share some of that. I haven't actually done that, attempting to share videos. We'll see. I did get a little bit of video that was fun for sharing, but we'll see.
But if you're using a flag, it could just be the flapping of the flag going through the bubble, or if you're using a stick, the snap just in the air, not even touching the horse.
Now, Farah, you said people can see me, right?
They sure can.
Okay, so for example, if I'm coming through, if I have strong intention and a clear picture, and I'm having a space conversation, often if I come through and there we go. It might be that small, it might be that soft, and they're understanding, I need that out of my way. It is unbelievable. When I have a conversation about space, I end up most of the time having to do a fraction of what I had to do when I was having a body part conversation. Yeah. So when I'm talking to a body part, it kind of triggers that opposition. It triggers the do I have to defend myself? Do I have to kind of push back a little? Do I have to hold my ground? Versus when I'm just having a conversation about space, that defensiveness isn't in there.
Oh, that makes, I love it. It's brilliant. We are, we're at 6:40 right now, Mountain, at least my time. All right, there are a few questions coming, but I do want you to be able to get.
Let me burn through this. We'll try not to go off on tangents. So we talked about qualities of excellence. defining whether it's excellent. Was it light at phase 1 or 2? Was it a prompt initiation? Did they start to get ready to respond within a second and a half? Understanding that draft horses get ready looks different than an Arab. Was it a positive reflex? So was the first step in the direction of the yield? And was it flowing, not sticky or staccato? And then when I dropped my life, did they give me a touchdown? You know, did the butterflies land? So, and then we had the great quote that I don't know if it was her quote, but that's who I heard it from, was don't ask your horse to sustain something you didn't willingly offer. And now we're on to the new stuff, and I definitely need to get through this because this is the new piece and this is super cool. So I want to talk about the 4 stages of progression. Now, let's see. So the first stage is, you know, can you get 1 step with excellence? And when I say excellence, I mean, you know, was it at phase 1 or 2? Was it within a second and a half? Was the first step the good step? And when I stopped, did they stop? Those are my 4 qualities of an excellent yield. So, you know, and I call those my foundation yields. Like, can I get all of my foundation yields 1 step with excellence? Because if I don't, I'm not going to be asking for more. You know, I'm not going to be asking for more steps. I'm not going to be asking for faster steps. I'm not going to be asking for further steps. I'm going to be asking the easiest, simplest conversation I can have about that foundation yield until there's absolute clarity where I can get all 4 of those qualities. Because until I get those 4 qualities, there is a breakdown in communication. My horse does not understand how to be a winner. They do not understand how to dance with me. So, and I'm only asking for 1 step, because if they don't understand it at 1 step, they're not going to understand it at 5. Yeah, it's just going to get heavier and stickier and ickier. So stage 1, that's stage 1. And if when I reach for my horse, you know, steady pressure, they feel like pushing a paper boat across the water, or rhythmic pressure, if I just give them a friendly invitation and they just flow, that's a green light to go to stage 2. So if when I ask, that first step is there within a second and a half, it's at phase 1 or 2, and it's just available and they're not running away, that's the touchdown piece. I have a green light in that moment to now start working on stage 2. And I have to make a judgment call. Like if I've been working for like the past 10 minutes on this yield and all of a sudden my horse gives me 1 step of excellence, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go to stage 2. It's the first time my horse gave it to me. It's the first time my horse gave me 1 step with excellence in that yield. I am gonna highlight that. I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to motivate my horse to give that to me again. I'm going to release. I'm going to cause that to be the most comfortable, pleasant, wonderful thing I can. I'm going to take any perceived pressure I possibly can off, meaning I'm going to relax my body. Maybe I'm even going to back away from the horse. Maybe I'll even turn away from the horse. Anything I can, depending on the situation, to highlight that they just nailed it. And I might even decide that's the one I'm going to put them up on. I'm going to put them up on. You know, maybe before I put them up, I'm going to go and take them, and maybe I'm going to let them graze for 10 minutes. So what can I do to highlight when they just nailed it? You know, so the first time I get that 1 step with excellence in a yield, I am very aware of when I got it the first time, and I do everything in my power to let the horse know that was it. Because often the very first time somebody gets a step with excellence, what do?
Again.
They ask for another one. Because all of a sudden it feels easy, right? All of a sudden they ask the horse to move and it's just effortless. It's just their dream horse. And because it feels easy, they want to do more of it. When it feels hard and sticky, they want to quit. And when it feels easy, they want to do more. It's, you know, that's our natural programming that we have to be mindful of to override.
Well, and it's frustrating. It's difficult for people too. If this is their first horse that they're taking through these steps, and they're like, "Oh, I finally felt it," versus if they've taken several horses to this. I mean, it's so easy to sit back and say, "Well, just quit there." You know, the horse got it, you got it, quit there, and the person's like, you know, just felt it only once. That's the joy of it, you know, playing with a horse that knows, or, you know, having already the experience behind there's only one way to produce that is go through it a couple times, unfortunately.
This is true. We learn the hard way by just asking, you know, by not quitting 5 minutes sooner. That's the saying, right? So the next stage of progression, so yeah, after stage 1, getting one step of excellence, stage 2 now is where you ask them to carry it, whatever that is. And it could be moving the hind, it could be going forward, it could be backing up, it could be a soft heel. You could apply these stages of progression to a lot of different things, pole flexion or a soft heel, whatever you want to call it. But if you have a green light at stage, at that stage 1, when you reach for them, say you're asking the horse to pick up a soft heel, those of you guys that ride with buck, you'll have heard this a million times. If when you reach for your horse, they reach for you, that's a green light now to ask them to carry it for a few strides. But if when you reach for your horse, there's a delay, a little hard spot before they give, you're still in stage 1. Because it wasn't at phase 1 or 2. It wasn't, it wasn't immediate. So that's what we're talking about. And you can apply these stages to everything. I mean, I haven't thought of anything you couldn't apply it to. So yeah, once you've done stage 1, you're now into stage 2, maintain gait. Now this is another place where people tend to make a lot of mistakes that really stalls their progress. The biggest thing I see people do in the maintain gait stage is they try to maintain a number of steps. They're looking for a number of steps versus looking for a frame of mind. So when I first go into maintain gait, I'm going, okay, maintain gait until my horse thinks, oh, keep going. So it's not a set number of steps. I'm going to go until my horse kind of turns loose, and they go with the feeling of, like, if you push a ball and you let it go, it kind of carries on. Versus if you push a chair, as soon as you stop pushing the chair, it's like, it's stopping. So I'm going to ask my horse to, when I'm in stage 2, I'm going to ask them to go until they're not asking the question, can I stop? Can I stop? Can I stop? Can I stop? I want them to say, oh, keep going. And as soon as I feel that for the first time, I get out. Because I'm only looking for one step, going back to stage 1. Because there's stages now. I'm looking for one step of excellence of the frame of mind of maintain gait. I'm not looking for 10 thinking of it. The first time they give me one of it, I'll reward it. Once they can, once that's the first thought. Once the first thought is the good thought instead of the first step is the good step. The first thought is the good step. Then I'm ready to ask for them to maintain gait for longer than just the first moment that they think of it, but when that's available immediately. So if I ask my horse and they boom, it's immediately available, and boom, they're immediately thinking about maintain gait. Well, now I can ask them to carry that maintain gait for a little longer. So there's stages within stages too, but that's that maintain gait stage.
Okay.
The third stage of progress, I call it effortless energy. So in stage 3, what we're looking for is, can we get our horse to give us energy, off of just us bringing up our life? If we bring up our life, do they bring up their life? And is it just effortless, where you can just go, and let's go? Or do you have to come in and support that with something? Do you have to say, and let's go, energize, come on. Here's my stick, here's my whip, here's my coils, here's my flag. So can I, so stage 3.
That's a good demo, by the way.
Yeah, so stage 3 is really about, can I have a conversation about energy? And can that be a really subtle conversation? Can I get to where when I bring my energy up, my horse brings theirs up, and they match me immediately? And then the 4th stage is healthy movement. So once I can have conversations about, an excellent step, maintaining that excellent step, energizing that excellent step, then we can start having conversations about healthy movement. Some horses will offer you healthy movement. So healthy movement might be, for example, taking a longer, looser step. Healthy movement might be offering you some nice, round, stretchy posture on the circle, versus going around with their head upside down. So healthy movement is just a better version, a healthier version of the movement versus one that's going to be slowly breaking them down. And some horses are ballerinas and some horses are sumo wrestlers. So if you have a ballerina, you're probably going to be seeing healthy movement back here in stage 1 or in stage 2 or in stage 3. It could show up in any of these other stages. And anytime my horse gives me an improvement in the way they're moving, that would be a slightest better try. And I'll try to highlight and reward that anytime I see it showing up. Because we can either, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember. It's the opposite of manufacture. You can either manufacture healthy movement in stage 4, like where you're specifically trying to make it, or you can just highlight it when it occurs.
Right. You can
encourage it.
Encourage the behavior, shape the behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, encourage it versus having to actually go in there and manufacture it. So if you have ballerina, they're going to be offering it, and all you have to do is encourage it, highlight it, use motivational strategies by rewarding them when they give it to you, and they're going to give you more of that. Whereas if you have a sumo wrestler, they're probably doing the minimum possible. And so it might be stage 4. Only after those other 3 conversations are possible, where your yields are excellent, that they'll carry it without, they'll kind of have that frame of mind of like, how far would you like me to take this? And you can bring the life up and bring it back down. When those 3 conversations are possible, then healthy movement also becomes possible for the sumo wrestler horses.
Sumo wrestler horses, that's great.
Yeah, I think Karen Rolfe has a really great way of describing it. She calls it conversations about relaxation, energy, and balance. Yeah, so this would be like you could combine this model with her model. Like she has a sweet spot, like a sweet, or I can't remember that word now. It's just left me. She's got spirals of finding the sweet spot. There it is. I'm mixing the 2. Finding the sweet spot, and the sweet spot is this like let loose, stretchy, beautiful posture where the horse just releases into something. And she uses conversations about relaxation, energy, and balance. So in here we have an energy conversation, but for balance, you can't have a balanced conversation with your horse if you don't have good yields. So this would be something to build in there before you go to Karen's model. So this is a way to get your foundation yields excellent, so that when you go to try to play with things like Karen's model, it's available. All you have to do now is have those conversations.
I'm actually, I would love for you to just run through a short example of something you're trying to teach a horse, but just for a second. So it is 6:52, and we so appreciate everyone who's come. And remember, if you hang out till the end, I will give you that promotional code. If you are not an IHA member, you'll get a 20% discount on our digital membership. So hang out till the end. And the stages of progress. So and then there are a few pretty cool questions I'd like to get to here, Fawn, as well. And if you do have a question, I'm not going to guarantee we have time for all of them, but you could type them in the chat. But I would like to get to a couple of these questions here. But if you don't mind, Fawn, would you just give us like something that you were trying to teach, like maybe if it was vertical flexion at the trot, or a shoulder in, or just a turn on the forehand? Can you just say in the phase, in the step 1, this is what you would look for. The step 2, this is what you would look for.
Yeah, for sure. And while I do that, I'm going to see if I can, I'm not as prepared. I had a whole bunch of internet issues, and so the preparation time that I was going to do, I kind of got derailed.
That's okay. Each time is better.
I don't think I can find those videos, unfortunately, quickly enough. So let's say hindquarter yield, and let's say I'm on my horse's back. So
okay.
Say I'm sitting on my horse and I'm asking for a hindquarter yield. So if I'm teaching, say first thing I do maybe is I softly apply my leg, and nothing happened. Well, let's see. No, I'm not going to be, well, when I'm riding, here's the thing, when I'm riding my horse, I'm not necessarily going to go hair, skin, muscle, leg, or bone with my leg ever. We might use a spur though. Okay, we'll use so say I'm going to teach my horse a spur, all right? Because that might be an example. Once again, I'm probably going to teach that on the ground too, because I don't want to discover a strange explosive.
Yeah, let's not discover it while you're riding, anyone.
I get everything good on the ground before I ride, so it's really not a big conversation. So I can actually be more in reinforcement conversations. So teaching, I'll press with my hair, press the hair with my calf, nothing happens. Then maybe I turn my leg out and I apply the spur, maybe at muscle. nothing happens. Then maybe I apply it a little stronger. Let's say it's just a round spur, not a pokey spur, but maybe it's a pokey spur. It could be either. So I just kind of slowly, gradually apply a little bit more pressure, a little bit more pressure. And I'm only going to go to the phase I need to go to cause my horse to search. If I can tell that they're looking for a way to resolve this sensation on their side, I don't need to do more. I'm not in a rush. I'm going to let them work at it. And if they try the wrong answer, if they try forward, I'll just block that. If they try, if they try backwards, maybe I'll let them go backwards because that's a lot of work. They're not going to go backwards very far. But when all of a sudden they take a step over with their hindquarters, boom, my leg comes off. And so I'm going to repeat that a few times until I feel pretty sure that my horse understands what I'm asking. When I feel like they know how to get that release, then I can have the option to move into another stage. If when I go to put my leg on, my horse goes to buck, I might go ahead and bend them, untrack the hindquarters. That might be control. I'm going to match, mirror, and override their intensity of bucking by how quickly and deeply I bend them and untrack those hindquarters. So that might be an example. Or maybe they go to bolts. So maybe I need to pick up on one rein. So that could be an example of teaching and controlling. Now reinforcing, which is what I'm more apt to be using by the time I'm riding, but not always necessarily. So say I use my leg. So I'll put my leg on hair, then I put my leg on skin. So then I might come in with my lariat, with my coils of my rope, or my flag, or my carrot stick, or my dressage whip. I'm going to start lightly tapping or more firmly tapping, but I'm going to try to also be having a space conversation. So I'm going to try to have a conversation about, hey, I need these hindquarters to get off of this space that they're standing in. Like I need this space to be cleared. And then when my horse steps over, I'll release both my leg and the driving pressure. But then I'm going to repeat that. I'm not going to leave that on that. I'm going to repeat it until I can go hair skin with my leg, and I don't need to do the light tap or the firm tap. I can do it completely independent of that, where I just get it off a steady pressure.
No, thank you so much. That was really great. And like you said, not leaving your horse on phase 4. Yes. So that's brilliant. Ada had a question about, you opened a whole can of worms, by the way, with this whole hanging boy bits conversation that you did.
Which one?
Wait, were you talking about boy bits hanging out?
Oh. Yeah.
So
well, it's something that people don't, I never heard anybody really talking about it. Mikey was the only other person really that ever I heard talk about it. It just doesn't, because a lot of people don't have stallions, I guess. And a lot of people that do have stallions are pretty harsh with them. And so maybe, yeah.
My Andalusian stallion, I tried all kinds of things, because especially when he was a colt, and they're getting like at 4 and 5, they get all these hormones and they don't know what to do with them. And I would get like really aggressive, just as, oh my gosh, you really have to pay attention to me. That's not, and he would mount the energy and get more and more and more defensive. And so then when you were talking about claiming the space, that's when I changed my attitude. He totally, and he couldn't control it. That was the thing. It was not a thing that he could mentally turn off. He was not being disobedient. He just didn't know what to do with his feelings. So just making him say, okay, we're just, I'm just going to claim this space until you can get in touch with that part of your body. But Ada's question was actually thoughts about a horse dropping, especially when they're getting cookies. Sometimes it's like he gets very excited when he gets cookies and he drops.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Food is it's something that I'm actually studying quite deeply right now. What are the benefits and pitfalls of using food in training? Because I have noticed that some horses, food, and I think actually Ada and I may have even had a conversation about that. Food is definitely a stimulant for horses. It's something just like dogs. I mean, they in dog training they use food to build drive, or they use toys to build drive depending on what the animal likes. So for some horses, food can be very arousing, and so you got to be really careful with food because it is so powerful. If you're not careful, you can reward a frame of mind that is not even though it's energetic and doing something you want, it might not be the most helpful, healthy frame of mind. And they'll build on something so much quicker if you're using positive reinforcement versus just negative, negative reinforcement, which is just taking pressure off or release. When there's positive reinforcement, that's like when you're getting paid to do something versus when doing something just feels better than not doing it.
Right.
If you're getting paid to do something, or there's something in it you're looking forward to, you're going to have extra, energy and pizzazz. But, if you're kind of doing it in a kind of manipulative or punk kind of an attitude, like you're kind of more mischievous, it'll also amplify that. So food will amplify whatever's under the surface. You got to be really, really so much more aware of, where your horse is at mentally when you're using food, because it's powerful. And man, I taught some things to my horses, using food that I was like, ooh, shoot.
I know about it now.
Yeah. I created some monsters. Oh my goodness! And I'm like, oh shoot! I was figuring out later what I did, but.
And I think having, like you said, having that balance between, okay, we're going to, if we need to add some pizzazz, or we also just need to feel comfortable in the movement, like that can be a reward. Just relaxation within the movement. Just like standing still can be a happy place for your horse to be. And it's important they find that. So I think that's great what you said. And then there's one more quick question from Shannon South. She said, I would be interested to hear Fawn's thoughts on creating effortless energy in a horse that is inherently very low energy.
Oh, absolutely. I'm reading her question. I saw that earlier. I was like, oh, I gotta get that. Yeah, absolutely. Just look at, like, say, for example, reining horses. Reining horses typically are horses that want to stop. Those are horses that they inherently want to just get in the ground and stop. But if you look at, like, how those guys do their large, fast circles, those horses are just, they open up. And there isn't, like, opening up the jig. They are really burning. They're going. So yes, absolutely is possible. I think when horsenalities came on the scene, in some ways it was really good, and in some ways it kind of was not so great, because it kind of gave people a bunch of excuses why their horse couldn't do something. Oh, my horse is a left-brain introvert. He's just that way. And rather than it being a strategy starting point, So the thing is, a really energy efficient horse, once they understand, this is you really have to know how to use motivational strategies with these horses, because once they understand that on the other side is what they're looking for, once they understand that when they go, past this little exercise, on the far end of it is a reward, they will work their butts off. They will put so much effort and so much enthusiasm into doing something because they know they're getting something that they want on the other side of it. But you really have to be masterful at motivational strategies with those horses, because if you're just going to try to make them do it, not that you couldn't, you could for sure. But the problem with that is lots and lots of women in particular just don't feel okay putting that kind of pressure, on a horse, or maybe they're intimidated and a little bit, halfway scared to put that much pressure on a horse to get them to do that. So you can absolutely do it for compulsion. People did it for a long time that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what a lot of people are looking for in their relationship. Sometimes they just don't feel good about it on the inside, and so it just doesn't work for everybody. There's certain people that that's they don't want to do the motivational strategy though. I want my horse to do it because I said so. And learning how to use compulsion strategies masterfully, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a very interesting thing to know. If you need to use those, what's the best, most ethical, most evolved way of using that? I need you to do this, and I need to do it now, even though you maybe don't want to. But also interesting is learning, how can I use motivational strategies masterfully? So for me, I want to learn how to use everything masterfully, because I don't want any limitations, and I want everything to be possible.
Me too. Perfect. Yeah. Well, and Caesar, my big quarter horse, you rode him one time, and I know, all kinds of things would go into factor with his motivation, as far as, oh, he's been locked in his stall for 12 hours. I'm going to have some more energy. Or
Oh yeah.
it's really warm in the afternoon. I'm probably not going to have the energy I want. Or he
Yes.
hasn't had his food yet. Let's use it to our advantage. So
You
I,
have to really be a strategist, you know, and how to use how to shape the situation, how to shape the environment, how to shape, yeah, and knowing when it's just not available.
yeah, absolutely. And not even asking if you don't think you're going to get it, you know, like,
Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. If I don't know that I can get a yes answer, I do not ask that question. I ask myself, because I used to ask those questions and I got no's. And I got no's that I could not get a yes from. And that was not a good session. That was not a good experience. I was like, oh, shoot.
Shoot, I just
This is bad.
didn't need to know.
And you get those tough horses that they teach you, like, no, you know, it's not going to happen, and you learn not to go there. You learn that was stuff, because it doesn't end well. And if the more you kind of bow up and try to kind of fight it, it just becomes a big old fight, and then nobody feels good at the end, and you damage a bunch of things. But so if I don't feel pretty dang sure that I'm going to get a yes answer, that I can get some form of a try, I don't ask the question. I say, well, what question can I ask that my horse will answer, that I can be successful at? And sometimes there's, sometimes when you go into, say, a round pen for a liberty session with the attitude of, rather than, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, if you go in thinking, what's available? What can I succeed at? Yeah, and sometimes there's very little that's available. Some horses are so sour and braced that sometimes the only thing that's possible is forward. Sometimes there's not much possible. If you can't get a horse just to go forward, that's really been a screwed up horse, because they're a flight animal. Forward should be available.
Right.
That's a man-made problem, but sometimes it isn't. You gotta be more strategic.
I think that this has been really fabulous, and I know you'll have lots of more information. We will keep talking with Fawn, and this will be available on our IHA YouTube channel, as well as in the LMS courses that we are going to be putting up here shortly. And for those of you who have hung on here and are not IHA members, I'm going to give you that promotional code right now. It is really simple. It is called LIVE, L-I-V-E 20, all one word. And if you put that promotional code, and you're welcome to tell your friends too, but it only lasts for 24 hours, and it's for 20% off of a yearly digital membership. So it'll take your $50 down to $40, and it's our gift to you for coming here tonight. And please tell your friends about the IHA. Support this fabulous nonprofit that Fawn and I and so many of our volunteers have worked so hard to create. And we can continue to do that with your help and support. And so, Fawn, thank you so much. It's been a privilege. I think we should do this on a regular basis, because I've had so much fun doing it with you. And thank you everyone tonight, and everyone saying thank you, give us the link, thank you, they enjoyed it. So I think we were entertaining at the very least, Fawn. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Farrah. It was a lot of fun, and I really hope people support the IHA, because I'm super excited about possibilities. As a professional, like, I want to be able to have a place that brings my colleagues together, so that I can, like Farrah and I are doing, we can bounce ideas off of each other. We can share stories. We can share struggles. We can network and have more of a formal place to do that. And that'll only make us better for students, and also a place for students to come together and explore different ideas and share their struggles. And I love how open-minded the IHA is. It truly is like a universal place that everybody can come and share ideas without, it's like, no, this is the only way to do it. But no, this is a way, and maybe it's a great way. This is another way. Like, hey, maybe there's some good things to learn from that. So really, you guys, if you have the money, I know not everybody does, but if you have the money to do it, please support this organization, because it really is trying to do some amazing things. It's trying to promote professionals and make it easier for them to get their information to you. make it easier for people that want to be professionals to do it in a real professional way, and to have a real clear path that doesn't in any way, take away their autonomy. And we're all about just, giving the students the best possible information we can. So the better we are, the more we have to give to you guys, and the more we can be a family, a community, because that's what most of us are in this for. And and that's what IHA is all about, is connecting professionals with students, and with events and opportunities and knowledge. So I know it's still in very much the growing stage, and with your guys' support, this can really take off and become something super amazing. So please join. If you know some other people, tell them about it, ask them to join, and tell any professionals that you know to come check it out. Have them email me if they're curious about it. I'd be happy to share kind of where the IHA is going, because it's really freaking exciting. So thank you, Farah, for the opportunity to come on here and present.
Thank you so much, Fawn. And this has been a selfish moment for me. I mean, like you said, I really love, I learned things from you tonight that I will use in my teaching. And I want to continue to learn from other people in the industry, just to make what I do better and share what I've learned, because it'll just elevate the standards of horsemanship worldwide. And so thanks again.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.